Good morning. We are today with Eric Lam, a Lemna researcher that studies the potential of it as a food source primarily. We are from the Frutotério group. It is an extension group of Piracicaba, São Paulo. And we are from the we are going to put the Eric in the next in the talk so we can produce himself and start his presentation. Any doubts you can send in the chat, and then it should be fine.
Am I on?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Bom dia a todos. Good morning, everybody. Nice to speak to you all from the United States. We're an hour behind, so it's still a bit early for me. Thank you for inviting me to speak to you today about some of the work that we are doing. So I'm very happy to have the opportunity to communicate with all the students in Brazil again. I had the pleasure to visit your country last year and may have met some of you then. So I would just like to start my talk about duckweed, which is a family that we believe has a lot of potential to contribute to problems that society are facing. So may I have the first slide, please? Or do I do that? Okay, thank you. So today's talk is on knowing and using duckweeds. And I will discuss some of the knowledge first that we know about this plant family that's growing on water, which is the theme of your symposium, I understand. And to talk about approaches and challenges of how to work with duckweed. Okay, so I think both it has a lot of opportunity, but of course, we have to do all the scientific groundwork to create a foundation so that to enable society to better use these plants that have not been really used in ages. And I'm from the Department of Plant Biology of Rutgers University. Our university have collaborated with USP for many years. So I hope some of you actually might know that and think about visiting us. Okay. So I'm a distinguished professor in the Department of Plant Biology at the School of Environmental Science and Environment and Biological Sciences. Do I move the slides myself? Let's see. No. Maybe I go to the next slide, please. I don't think I can move this. I can move the slide. Sorry. It's taken me a while to get used to this platform. Okay. So the challenges to the population on this planet is one of them is overpopulation. And by 2050, which is only maybe another 2 decades from now, we will reach more than 9 billion people on this planet. Okay. And that amount of increase in people and the mouths to feed have been predicted to require about 60% more productivity for all of our major crops, which include maize, rice, wheat, and soybean. Okay. And in addition, the amount of water demand to support this increase in population will be going up tremendously. Okay, as you can see in this chart, which will be, kind of both for agricultural use, which is a major user of fresh water, as well as for people, domestic use. And as you see here, a lot of the parts of the world is predicted to have effects on climate change by climate change. So in combination, this is a challenge of how do we get enough water and food to support this large increase in populations all over the world. So one of the opportunity to meet this challenge is to find a new plan to augment what we have in traditional crops, because most of the arable land have already been used. And in fact, many of them are being degraded and partly affected by climate change as well, as you well know, because of the drought and heat. So for an ideal plan that we can introduce to support what has been lost or what is needed to increase, we would like these plans to be scalable, which means that they can be adopted for diverse application and deployment, from personal use to farm scale kind of productivity. In addition, we need these plants to be resilient or protected from climate change, so that we are not constantly being challenged by storms and rain and drought that we cannot predict anymore. They need to be environmentally friendly, so that we are not degrading more of our resources. And they need to be having rapid generation time, so we can produce lots of it, and in a large range, a wide range of adapted climates, okay, so that we can actually support this planet's needs. They need to have high nutritional value, so that they're good for a human, right? Proteins and vitamins, not just calories. And they need to be kind of have easy harvesting and processing in order to be economically efficient for conversion to food and other bioproducts. So these are properties of what we hope an ideal plant will have, so that they can be used to support the additional needs of the increased population and challenges by climate change. So this is why we work on duckweed. Okay, as I'll try to convince you today, this is a versatile plant family that has never really been used commercially, okay, or at an industrial scale to support really a significant economic impact. Why we choose that, right? So this is kind of the knowing part, okay, to share with you some of the special qualities of duckweed in the next few slides. First is knowing them. So these are flowering plants. They of the family Lemnaceae. There's 5 genera and 36 known species. And these are actually flowering plants that are the smallest in the world. So you can see from here, this is a picture with a scale here in, roughly this is 1 centimeter and so on. So these smallest species are called wolfia. They are about 1 millimeter in size. But they are true flowering plants. So they are actually very similar to all the other plants that you normally see around you. But they have a very small size, and they grow very fast. And these are aquatic monocots, which are related much more to grasses and other traditional crops such as sugarcane and rice. I mean, these are all monocots family, right? And they grow on fresh to brackish water. So they actually inhabit a lot of the ponds and lakes of the world. They are perennials, which means that they grow all year with a worldwide distribution. So only in deserts and permanently frozen polar region like Antarctica then you don't find duckweed because they don't have a chance. um, but they have importantly, they have strains that have very high protein, up to 40% protein in dry weight. Starch similarly can be up to 60% in starch, and they have one of the key quality, which is low lignin levels. Lignin are the chemical compounds that actually make cell walls of plants, and they create a very, very tough cell wall, okay? And this is how you make wood, is by lignifying tremendously the cell wall of trees, for example. And they make it very hard to digest by animals. So, for example, grasses that your cows would eat actually have very high levels of lignin, and that's why they need a rumen with microbes that actually enable the animals to digest very tough cell walls of grasses, right? So duckweed actually is great for food because it naturally have extremely low lignin, instead of 30 to 40% dry weight of lignin of the plant cell. It actually only have about 5%, right? So it's easily digested by all kinds of animals, from simple nematodes, like worms, to cows and fish. So this is one interesting quality of duckweed that you would want to remember. This is just show you 3 different ranges of size. This is the giant duckweed, or Spirodella. That's the genus. It is in the size of 1 centimeter to 2 centimeter at most in terms of the diameter of the what we call the fronds, which is the major plant body. And the smallest is called wolfia. I think I mentioned that to you before, and you can fit, about 5,000 wolfia on a thimble, which is what you put on your fingertips when you sew. Some of you sew. So this is to protect your fingertip, right? So, but this is just to show you how small the plant is. This is the smallest flowering plant in the world. And this is the intermediate size, which is the most widely distributed genus of duckweed called Lemna, okay? Just to give you a sense of the variation within the same plant family. All right, so one of the quality of duckweed that I mentioned to you is that it's the fastest plant biomass production system. How fast is that? Well, if you give it an optimal condition, which means nutrient, sunlight, and water, it can double in less than 2 days. Okay, so it's twice as fast as other type of fast plants. So it's well, basically, this is how it grows in nature to compete with this competitor in during its evolution, right? So it grows on water. So its major competitor is the algae, right, and other microorganisms that grow in the water bodies, but inside the water column. Duckweed flows so that it basically inhabit the top of the water, and by growing very fast, we believe that it gives them the advantage, right, of absorbing and covering the water body to suppress these competitors. Well, anyway, this tells you what we think is the evolutionary reason why they have evolved very fast time or reproduction pathway. And this is true, very kind of quick clonal reproduction, right? So that's why we call each adaptive population of duckweed a clone, because these are all clonal, okay, by asexual propagation. And the potential biomass yield based on their measured growth rate is about 80 metric ton per hectare per year. And this is much faster than what you can get from corn or any other plant, even with heavy fertilizer application in the fields. in a actual realistic demonstration back in 2008, which is almost 20 years ago, it's already been shown that you can achieve, even in very low-tech situation in Bangladesh, about 40 metric ton per hectare per year, okay, by growing duckweed on wastewater. So this is kind of what attracted us to work with duckweed, because of the tremendous growth potential that duckweed can be cultivated on wastewater and can help remediate it by actively removing the excess nutrient, right? That's why the wastewater create a problem, because it have too much nutrient for microbes. And this is what duckweed's ecological services could be for wetlands, for example, and that's to clean the water by reabsorbing the nutrients that is enriching, okay? And this is true rapid biomass accumulation, right? And you can see this in many of the wastewater treatment plants that I visit, both in China and in New Jersey. These are provisions of wastewater or through human activity. And then duckweed will eventually utilize it, okay, because they're carried there by fowls and other waterfowls or birds, and also other animals. And then you will see them rapidly take over the surface of these wastewater treatment plants. All right, so how do we actually use duckweed, right? So I think all you now know duckweed a little bit after I described them to you. So the challenge is, how do you domesticate an aquatic plant, right? So that it become a new sustainable crop. And so what we think about 10 years ago already now is that it will require an integration of biology and engineering. And I'm a plant biologist, so I'm not a good engineer, but I'll show you a little bit of our attempt later on to try to do some engineering on our own. But the most focus area that we are trying to contribute to is to really build the foundation of the biology, right? What does that mean? That means first that for any crop that you want to start, you want to start with the germplasm development, because nature provides a lot of the variation, right? Natural variation in different locations where the duckweed species had adapted to the climate condition and to the wastewater condition, right? All their whatever lakes and ponds that will be there. And so that resource, the natural variation, provide the reservoir of traits that will enable us to identify the right strains and learn about what the possibility and the potential of duckweed in terms of its what it can produce for us, right? In terms of high protein, high starch, or other products that we like to have as our endpoint in the farming of the duckweed, right? So this is the essential part that we try to start first, which is to collect, characterize, and optimize for different type of traits, okay, so that we can create this resource for the community to leverage on to build a new sustainable crop system. And in addition to this, we need to learn how to produce the biomass reliably and sustainably, right? Because without that, we won't have a business. We won't be able to create the engine for innovation. So we need to then address some of these approaches that I'll talk to you about today, okay? These are the later steps, which we haven't really done much because we have been spending most of our work trying to understand the biology and trying to learn to grow them, right? To produce them, so that you have the raw material to start to optimize for the downstream production of the final products that will enable you to close the loop, right? And enable this sustaining a new business, essentially. So this is something that we believe are very critical in the beginning, is to have this feedback loop between what we learn in the field and what we do in the laboratory, right? To drive this foundation to fruition. Okay, so we started in 2009 to begin the first really open collection of duckweed germplasm in the world. And this is already now 15 years, right? So we've been doing this for a long time. We started with about 500 also strains from Lando. Elias Lando is one of, we call him the father of modern duckweed research, because he's the one that spent about 50 years of his life collecting over 2,000 strains, and we obtained about 500 strains from his collection. And we have, together with other strains that we obtained from Todd Michael, we have in total about 580 strains when we started in 2009. And currently we have increased to about almost 900 clones, losing some on the way, but we have actually worked with others in the community to actually replace them or increase with new isolated clones and so on. So together we have almost 1,000 clones now in our collection. And this is a difficult challenge. You have to appreciate that, because these are not plants that flower easily. So we don't have seeds. We have to continuously carry and transfer these 1,000 living clones of duckweed. Okay, so we have to find ways through a lot of hard work from my group and others to identify how to manage these numbers of living plants in a very small space and operation. Okay. But our vision is really to facilitate and broaden the use of duckweed, because no one lab can do what I just shared with you in the last slide. It's a big challenge for a whole community to succeed. And we need to share and characterize these natural diversity at both the genome and phenome level, so that we can rapidly ramp up our understanding of this family of plants and learn how to use them and actually make this successful. So we kind of have been helping the community to build the basic resource that we need, which is high resolution genotyping technologies, genome sequencing for many of and all the genera. Now we have reference genomes to characterize it at the molecular level and extend this resource for the whole community. Okay, because we need multiple labs with very different talents to combine together in order for this kind of challenge to be overcome. And just to give you some idea of how different duckweed is, but also how similar they are. So they're all small, as I show you, and they all have very simple architecture. So they basically are plants that don't show a lot of difference in morphology, but within the same species. But between species and between genera, they can be quite different and easier to distinguish that way. These are showing you all the different kind of wolffia. They're all very small in size. These are all, lemnas and spirodellas, which are larger. And spirodella have many more roots. That's why they're called polyrhizas. and they're bigger, and they're the more ancient species, okay, because this is how all the other more derived, we call it, or more evolved duckweed have evolved from. Okay, so the Spirodela is much more like a normal plant. Okay, but as you get to Wolffia, they have lost the traits of making roots. They don't have any vasculature, and they just flower, and that's the most distinctive thing, other than just being a ball of cells. Okay. But you have also other ones like denticulata, Wolffiella, which look really pretty wild. Okay, so but they're for the most part fairly simple plants, right? And this is actually one of the things that interests me, right? How these plants are able to adapt to so many climatic conditions without changing too much of the form and shape. Okay. So this is still something we want to understand and appreciate better. But just to show you that we did some preliminary screen. For example, we screened about 50 strains from our collection. And when we look at their growth rate, they can vary by sixfold. And when we look at their starch content, they can vary by eightfold, up to about 50% dry weight in starch. So you can see that there's a tremendous range of phenotypic variation in terms of traits that we're interested in. And protein level can vary up to fourfold, and the highest is around 40% dry weight in protein. And some of the uses for duckweed. Okay, so the characteristic, as I mentioned to you, again, fast-growing plant. So you can see why they can quickly cover a pond, for example, and it become almost a green lawn. They are aquatic plants, so they don't need any soil naturally, and they can be grown anywhere because of this, without carrying a huge amount of weight, right? So imagine if you want to grow indoor plants on soil, the natural most of the plants that we're used to, that's the natural habitat. There's a tremendous amount of soil that will be needed, and which prevents you from scaling up, right? And if you're growing aquatic plant that's growing on just one layer of water, it's easy to vertically expand. You can imagine, okay? And I'll show you later. Locally adapted strains found worldwide, so there's no one country that will have monopoly over this, or one area. You can grow this anywhere. And this soft tissue, as I told you, with very low lignin. This makes it easy to process and work with, okay, in terms of creating your downstream products. So what are the potential applications? We'll talk a little bit about food, right? Because that's actually the higher value application of duckweed is actually human food, where it's if you find strains that are packed with protein, vitamins, and antioxidants, you can actually find a niche for it if you can produce it economically enough, right? You can also use duckweed for biofertilizer, but again, this is kind of lower margin application. Animal feed, same thing. And for biofuels, you can easily make bioethanol with all the high starch of duckweed. And I'll show you now later that you can make biodiesel with transgenic duckweed, because we can make high oil duckweed. But these will require very large scale production in order for you to be able to be profitable. So we're not there yet. You can use it for carbon sequestration or wastewater remediation. These will require even larger production, okay? And so I arranged them like this because that's the path that duckweed can be deployed. But as you go down, you need larger and larger scale of production in order for you to have a chance to be successful, okay? So right now we are focusing on this because of economics. All right, this just shows you the example I mentioned, okay? And this is that duckweed naturally have very low oil, because we think that the reason is because to use oil and to make oil takes more it's slower process because it's much more complicated, right, than making and degrading starch. So duckweed naturally like to live a fast life. So it doesn't do that, okay? So it doesn't make much oil. We screen and other lab have screened. They just naturally don't make much oil. They store their energy preferably as starch. So you can find high starch strength very easily, but not oil. But as scientists, we could actually engineer triacylglycerol accumulation in duckweed. And this is a paper that came out 2 years ago already. And that's like where they express 3 different transgenes in the oil biosynthesis pathway. And you can actually, this is showing you the fatty acid quantification of wild type and empty vector, and then single gene, double gene, and triple gene transgenic. Okay, to show you that the fatty acid level in these plants don't change all too much. Okay, these ones actually have genes that are driving fatty acid biosynthesis, but you don't over accumulate that much. Okay, I mean, but you do increase a little bit in these 2 situations. The interesting thing is triacylglycerol. When you are able to put in the 3 transgenes and express them stably, now you can get to about 10% dry weight in triacylglycerol, okay? And that's very high because naturally it only have 0.1%. So you increase the amount of oil content in duckweed through expressing 3 transgenes by 100-fold, okay? So that's significant. Why? Because based on this percentage of dry weight, if we can now produce it, just like I showed you before, based on the success rate of, how high the duckweed can grow, you would be able to make 350 gallons of oil per acre, okay, approximately. And this is about 7 times more than what you get currently with soybean per acre, okay? And equal to what you can grow with oil palm. Now, bear in mind, this is just using 1 layer of duckweed, okay? I'll show you what you can do when you can actually vertically amplify the production of duckweed, right? So based on footage, we can already achieve what you can achieve with soybean if you're making biodiesel, okay? And this is growing duckweed on wastewater. All right, so now we go to the next step, okay? Why hasn't duckweed been commercialized, right? If we know this for so long, why don't we find people growing duckweed and selling duckweed products? Well, that's because you have to use a lot of land to grow duckweed if you just grow 1 layer, okay? And the harvesting, everything needs labor. So the labor cost plus the land cost is what I think are major reasons why you do not see duckweed by kind of commercial products out there. So the challenge number 1 is how do you then grow duckweed reliably, right? You have a business, you want to be reliable, you need to deliver. Consistently deliver in order to survive. When you grow things at scale, it's not trivial, right? So we take an approach of utilizing the unique growth habitat of duckweed. What does that mean? Well, that means this is floating, right? So you don't really need a lot of depth of water of the media to grow duckweed. So naturally, when people try to copy nature, they just go out and dig a ditch or a pond, and then they grow duckweed, right? You have several meters at least of water there. Well, duckweed is very, very small, so it just float on the top. So it is not a very smart use, right? But of course, that's how naturally duckweed is grown. But agriculture is not nature, right? So agriculture is trying to think about how the plant grows and take advantage of that, actual growth habitat and try to be smart of using what is best for our purpose. So what we believe is vertically integrated growth system is the answer, right? Because here we use only about maybe 10 centimeters for each of these trays, and we aim to make that even shorter. I mean, because you really don't need all that depth. And with rapid harvesting every 3 days, the duckweed never really need to stay in the water that long. So we want to modularize the system to enable maximum scalability and connectivity between your growth space. And you want to combine sensor technology and automation, right? This is the key. And this is also why in previous decades, people are not able to grow duckweed very smartly, is because they don't have the technology, but we do now easily. And we can decrease the labor costs and facilitate application of artificial intelligence approaches to adapt to accelerated the optimization of the productivity, right? So this is what our third generation prototype already looked like, where we have 6 tiers. So you can already increase your productivity by 6-fold, right, per unit area. To give you a sense of what that gives you, right, in terms of potential product. So with a 1 square meter footprint, we can multiply then with 6 tiers by 6-fold, right? So at the height of 2 meters, okay, in total. So that means that these racks about 2 meters in height. So at this top growth rate from our screening of our collection of duckweed, we find this is the top production strain, which is 22-gram dry weight per square meter per day. So this equivalent already about 75 metric ton per hectare per year. This is similar to what I quoted you before. So we basically just confirm the previous observation. You can, what you can produce from duckweed from our optimal strains, right? And so with the 6-fold increase, we can generate already, 6 times 22. This is simple math, right? 130 grams, theoretical production of dry duckweed biomass per square meter per day. So this is up to, again, just multiply this by 6, 450 metric ton per hectare per year. So this is already 38 times of what is currently feasible with corn cultivation, which is the major crop in the US. And this is not requiring any new land, arable land. This you can do indoor, right? With multiple stories, you can generate a lot more. So if this is realized, right, this is why we continue to work at this hard problem, because this can be an unprecedented level of edible biomass that can have significant impact to solve the world's problems, right? Both the global food shortage as well as climate resilience. And this is kind of the vision of the day, and that is that we are at this point right now where we can easily, with a small space, produce 1 to 10 kilogram per day. That's what we call the localized model, where you can essentially have, support system for food and other nutrients in a minimal amount of space. We are working toward scaling up our production module to about 20 to 30 trays instead of 6. And this will get us to the space of about 10 kilogram to 1,000 kilogram per day, right? This is 1 ton per day. And eventually we hope to industrialize this to the agricultural scale. And then you will, with 1 block, you can generate about 1,000 tons a day, right? And this is the other thing that we are starting, which is educational approach to try to create systems where it can be easily sold and stable that on the shelf that we can use for education to teach people about duckweed. That you can store duckweed in this dormant form called turions. They don't make seeds easily, as I told you. But turions can be produced from many species of duckweed, and we have the optimized fertilizer that we can sell to very cheaply to people so that they can try growing duckweed anywhere, anytime. Okay, so this is sort of our approach to popularizing duckweed. And of course, the protein powder, protein-rich powder that's up to 40% protein, or fresh duckweed as a salad microgreen, right, for food supplements. And I think those are the current state that we are at right now, which is still waiting for the big shot of investment to really translate all these abilities now and knowledge and resources into final sustainable business, right? That will help drive the engine. So I'll stop here. Thank you for your attention, and I'll answer any questions with the remaining few minutes.
Well, fine. We are open for questions then. Let me just try to put the layout here. Okay, just to show more people. Well, I think that we can inform people in the chat that they can send questions right now. But I would like to start with a personal question, because in the beginning you said about the lignin, and it is a problem to use it as a food source, but not in lamina because it has low levels of lignin. But we have a very similar species that is not actually very related to lamina, but it is morphologically similar. It's the azolla, probably you know. And we probably this is a difference, right, between lamina and azolla. We're using it as a food source.
Well, azolla also have been presented as a potential food source. I don't know azolla that well, so what I do know is it's more restricted in its growth parameter. But having again, if you grow it indoor, then you can really control the growth parameters much better. So I don't think that's a big problem. The issue is that it's a fern. It's not a azolla, so it's not angiosperm, if I understand correctly. So I do not know how well it, kind of behave and so on. So it's potentially could be another candidate, right? I don't know so well its biochemistry, so I don't know if it has high lignin or how good it tastes. I just have eaten duckweed, so I know that's fairly simple.
And about the growth, we in the Hidrophitaria, we have both. We have laminas and azollas, and we noticed that the growth parameters of these two species are a little different. And you know, like, if lamina has a preference for more sunlight, for more heat, or for more ventilation. Like, growing lamina in a closed space could be a problem, or the ventilation of the room is just fine for it.
Yeah, I don't know enough about azolla to comment on it, to be honest. So I have not worked with azolla, although I know people who has, but yeah. But duckweed have a different preference, right? Because it's a large family. So, for example, Spirudella you find in more cooler climates. It tolerates cold better. Lemna and Wolfia basically are progressively more preferable for warmer climates. Yeah. So you find that in different season, they will the same plant might have more predominant of one species than another. Yeah.
We have a question in the chat, and it is about the. Well, I'm going to translate it. It was
Thank you.
commented that it is very, very easy to grow lamina, right? But the person in the chat wants to know if there is a major difficulty in this culture and maybe a major difficulty in making it popular as a food source, like flavor or something cultural, this kind of problems that could have.
There's always a barrier, right, to try to change people's food on the table. So I think it's the marketing and education. I can say duckweed, so far I've tasted many different species and genera. They don't have a very strong taste. So I think the practical aversion is not an issue, but I think it's the education about the benefits is important because for people to change, there had to be something gained, right? So they're either more, um, kind of like there had to be a reason for people to change their normal diet. One is availability. I mean, because there are people that they might need a source of, vitamin or protein. So I think this is where we have to educate the consumer about different markets, what they are looking for, right? I mean, so if you are talking about asking people to switch to a new food, there had to be a reason. So I think for duckweed is right now we're focusing and the industry is focusing on high protein, good vitamin profile. So there are studies that are clinical trials that demonstrate benefits of eating, for example, the wolfia that has high vitamin B12, which is an essential vitamin for humans, right? Because we need to get that from our food. We cannot make that. So I think these are part of the, process, right? To get a new food introduced and accepted, in addition to price and availability, right? So I think these are multiple things that we are trying to juggle with, and again, that's part of why duckweed is not developed yet as a real crop. But I think the ability to grow it in the first place is not as trivial as you think, because to grow something at high quality and with high reliability of productivity, which is what you need as a farmer. If you cannot produce consistently with both quality and quantity, it's hard to make a business. So this is the major hurdle we have to achieve at the same time, educating people and finding the right strains with the right property. So these are the multiple challenges, right? Otherwise, it would have been done a long time ago. Yeah. So these are good questions. But I think that is why we need also more people to work on it so that we will solve these problems, right? Yeah, with multiple approaches.
And making another question or like a comment, but based on the last one.
Hmm.
You commented about the B12 vitamin and about the market, conceptual market, about lamina. And I think a lot about vegetarians, vegans, people, because uh, as I know, B12 it's a essential vitamin, as you said, but commonly vegetarians, vegans get to a lack of this vitamin because meat and animal products are not, I think mostly the bigger income of these vitamins for us, and maybe uh, uh, I don't know how I could say it, but something focused on these markets that it's growing like by the time there's more and more people that are not eating meat anymore, and maybe
Hmm.
lamina would be a good way to help these people with this lack of vitamin B12.
It's not just vegans. If you think about India, for example, many people cannot afford meat because it's expensive, and that's exactly why we're working on it. I can send you a paper we just published this year that examined this question about where does the B12 in duckweed come from, right? And how do we actually in the future um, create this alternative for people who does not have access to meat or do not want to have meat, right? So I think that this is exactly the kind of niche that duckweed can have a role to play. So we are exactly addressing this right now. Actually, looking at the microbiome because the duckweed cannot make the B12. The plants don't make that, and they don't require it because they don't have enzymes that actually require B12 as a cofactor. This is why humans like us uh, actually require B12 because we have enzymes that require B12, right, as a cofactor. So we believe that this is um, opportunity, right? These are the opportunities where we can sell to a market that is not existing yet, right? I mean, vegetables that actually are high in essential vitamins that you otherwise will lack if you are vegan or if you don't have the money to buy meat in many countries in the world. Yeah. But I'll share that reprint with you, Carlos. You can share with your colleagues as well. They just came out this year, our paper.
I think it's we would be very grateful if you sent this paper to us. I think it's a very interesting thing, and I think that what you said about the price of meat, it's true also in Brazil. Like it is getting more expensive, and probably would be very useful some source of vitamin B12. So
Hmm.
it's very important, very interesting to know that we can make some plants produce it for us.
Yeah, sure. I will do that. No more questions?
I think that don't people in this chat just send that one question, and some
Okay.
people just um, rated like well are grateful for the presentation, send a message, good messages, and I think that is it is what we have for today.
Okay. All right. Obrigado. So, ciao.
Ué, tchau, tchau. Muito obrigado, viu?